I'm Russ Kickle, and on this episode of Americanreef, I finally made it back over to Mike's place. It's been 2.5, 3 years kind of thing. And so this video will be the first of about 4 update videos on how he's doing, how his tanks are, and the changes that he's made. So stick around for that, and before we spin that up, remember, give my sponsors a chance to earn that business. You've heard me say 1,000,000 times, right? Maybe not 1,000,000, but at least 1,000, right? They're good, honest guys that won't let you fail. That's Bulk Reef Supply, Tunzi, right? Ecosystems, and their Miracle Mud. Again, great guys, great products. Give them a chance to earn that business. Michael, it's been forever.
2 years, Russ. It's sad.
At least.
COVID came. You forgot me. You don't love me anymore.
That's right.
And lots of changes, lots of things to talk about. It's nice to be back with you. We just sat and talked for an hour.
Right.
It's like, you know, you've been gone forever, but things are the same.
Right, exactly. Hold it. That being said, that's not the same.
Things
right?
are the same, but they're not the same. It's the
Right.
same tank. It's the same system, but it's been completely turned over. And sadly, or for actually good reason, it's going to be turned over again. When I say turned over, last August, I had a heater malfunction. And the heater, which I should have unplugged for the summer, but I didn't, kicked the tank up to 96 degrees for 2 days.
And tell everybody what happened first, because I never...
The little sensor for the heater lifted up out of the water, and even though the room was 72, it was trying to get the tank to 72. It didn't do that, so it malfunctioned and cranked the tank up to 96 degrees for 2 days. Normally, you would think everything would die,
Right.
but it was amazing what died and what didn't die. All of the small fish died. All the little damsels, all the firefish, all the little wrasses, all died. All the big fish, the blue-faced angel, the Niger trigger, the quinquinvitatus wrasse, all survived. The big tangs, the yellow tang, the chocolate tang,
Which is still wow.
which I don't understand. But all the big corals died. The giant sinularias, the giant leathers, all of they died. All of them died, not all of they. All of them died, and all of the small corals survived. So the big fish and the small corals survived, and the big corals and the small fish all died.
Right.
Needless to say, it was a mess in this tank. I had to take out these big, literally 20 to 30 pound sinularias and leather corals that were all drooping and leaching a lot of nasty stuff into the water. Did 2 50-gallon water changes on this tank, which is a 120-gallon tank in 3 days. Ran 1.5 pounds of carbon, ran 6 poly filters. Finally, everything stabilized. So then, starting in October, I started adding in corals again and small fish. And to be honest, I actually like it better now.
Me too.
There's black leopard wrasses, there's ornate leopard wrasses, there's substrate running along the front for the leopard wrasses that sleep in at night. There's Nephthia and Lithophyton. Julian sent me some Gorgonians and a sea fan, all of which are thriving and doing well. What else? There's mushrooms. There's a lot of little sinularias and a lot of other soft corals. Xenia again.
That Xenia survived? So
No, it was downstairs. I took it, brought it back up here.
That's not the one that was. Okay.
No, this is the one that was downstairs. That crapped out from the heat.
yeah.
Because that was a big giant head. But
Right.
it's doing fine now. And now this tank is much more stable. I have redundancy on the heater system. So if the heat goes up above 78, I get a phone alert. So I know that if there's a problem. I've added these Reef Bright blue lights onto here. So in addition to the G4 LEDs that have been on here now for 4 years, and these blue lights, right now we're getting towards summer. These have been reduced by 50% because I don't need it as much with the sunlight. And now that we're in April and the sunlight's hitting this tank, these corals will just explode with growth over the next 5 months. So what little tiny things that are in here now will all take off relatively quickly. So I will be very happy with that.
Okay, so a couple questions. Number one, when the tank, you said the tank actually stabilized, what were you testing, right? In other words, I'm a new hobbyist and my tank crashed. What do you test to realize?
I was testing nitrate, phosphate. I was looking at the color in the tank.
Okay.
When you look across it from here, it should be clear. When all that stuff leached into the water, it was yellow, nasty yellow. So I knew there was a lot of dissolved organics. I also looked at how often I had to clean and change the skimmer. For the first month, I was changing it literally every other day. So it was taking out a lot of nasty gunk in there. And just the general disposition of the fish and the corals was,
Right.
I mean, you could look and you could see what everybody's like now. Everybody's moving around, swimming. They're hiding now because I'm standing in front. And the corals were all kind of droopy. There were no polyp extension. There was nothing that was good. So I waited literally 3 months before I added anything in here till once everything had stabilized.
That makes sense.
A couple other things I did. I took off the Tom stepper pump in the back because I'd gone through 4 of them in the previous 3 years, and at $40 a pop,
Right.
it's kind of expensive. I then went to the old school and just attached the drain line or the air line onto a power head. It now extracts all of the air that accumulates in the overflow, so I don't have the overflow blocking, and I don't have to worry about it filling up when I'm away on vacation, which is traditionally what it did.
Right.
So this, instead of spending $30 to $40 for a Tom stepper pump, I spent $18 on a power head that has the nozzle drawing in air, and it does a much better job.
Right.
Some people don't like that you're shooting air bubbles in here, but I have the bubbles blowing to the top of the tank, which I'll show you. And you'll see in a second, there go the bubbles.
There you go. Actually, I'll zoom in.
Yeah, that's what's accumulating in the overflow. You wouldn't think it would be that much. But
Well, and to your point though, too, if for some reason people don't like that, put the power head in the sump.
yeah,
You know, again, if you don't want the bubbles in the tank. So,
yeah. I mean, it's something
Yep.
easy and cheap, and
Yep.
it's old school. I mean, we've always think
I like
newer
old
is better.
school.
This is as old school as it gets. We were literally doing this in the 90s. And a lot of us had forgotten about this is the way to do an overflow because most of us have drilled tanks. This tank isn't drilled. It has a nice CPR overflow on the back. It works great.
Yeah.
I mean, it can handle the full flow from a Vectra M2.
There it is.
So, I mean, it cranks the flow.
That, and one of the things that I always used to say is, you know how sometimes since you have sand, you'll get scratches on the front. When you don't have a drilled tank, you can just turn the tank around and have a brand new front glass.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a few little scratches in here, but I try to be extra careful. But you're always going to get some
Yeah,
scratches.
yeah, exactly.
The other thing I've done is there are 3 MP60s on the tank
I
now.
was going to say, yeah, they're big boys. Right?
Yeah, really cranking the flow in here. And then there's a couple power heads over here. Even with all that flow, because these rocks are basically flat, they were still accumulating detritus. So I put this power head that blows across it. And I also got, if you look closely, there's aftermarket
Yes.
flows on here that blow the flow down onto the rock to keep the detritus from settling on here. So between the two, I'm not getting a lot of detritus on there. In the sand, I have a couple of sand sifting starfish to keep the sand pretty clean. There's also a red spotted goby that stirs stuff up. And like I said, the leopard wrasses all go in there at night and they stir it up.
Right.
So after 4 months, the sand pretty much looks the same as it did the day I put it in. Because this has only been in here for 4 months, the sand. And I also have PVC across the back that keeps the sand from blowing to the back of the tank. It keeps it from constantly moving around. Because the only place you really see it is in the front.
Sure.
So it looks nice, it works well, and the fish seem to love it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean, every night at dusk, I sit there and I'll watch the wrasses lay down and flop and
I love
flip the
that.
sand up and then bury themselves. So
Yep.
it's pretty cool.
Yep.
And like I said, there's a lot of small fish. There's a school of green chromas. There's a pair of acaride cardinal fish that are tiny. They'll get to be this big like they did downstairs. There's ornate ornate leopard wrasses. This is actually a true pair of porcula clowns that I got out of Indo. Took me close to 6 months to find true perks. Everyone likes designer perks. I still love the plain true perks, but these guys are dummies. There's 3 anemones in here. What are they symbiotic with? The xenia. I don't understand. But okay, whatever they want. There's xenia, there's suspicularia, there's a lot of different sinularias, there's a lot of different leather corals. I've tried to get as wide variety of stuff as I can in here, let it grow, and see what happens.
Sure.
So, like I said, now that it's April, everything will take off growth-wise until like October, when it doesn't get much sunlight. Right now it gets, if it's sunny, which has been rare for the past month,
right.
If it's sunny, it'll get 2 to 6 hours of sunlight, which really cranks up the growth rate.
Have you ever checked the par on that? Because remember when you were trying to do
It's over 1,000 in
yeah,
the summer.
it was high.
Yeah, it's over 1,000 in the front when the light's coming down through the skylights.
Right.
So 1,000 par. But fortunately, the corals have gotten accustomed to it as it gradually increases. So they don't really show a lot of bleaching or anything else like that.
Right.
So I've been pretty happy all in all.
Right.
Have an automatic feeder that feeds 6 times a day, and then I feed another 4 small times a day, either pellets or HPV. They get a wide variety of food here, and for the most part, everything's done well. The anthias, the clowns. You can also see there's a black perk in there too.
Yep.
He was actually downstairs in the frag tank for 2.5 years. I finally felt bad for him. Thought I should put him in here. And there's a trio of them now. They jostle about, but they haven't killed each other. So that's the good news.
So, that being said, you said you're happy there. What aren't you happy with now?
The main thing I'm not happy with is the tank, or is the stand actually. It always needs painted. You always get water on it. There's water. I've had, unfortunately, a couple of spills that have put water dramatically, or not dramatically, but significantly underneath.
Sure.
So I'm sure it's, even though boards are supposedly waterproof, I'm sure it's going to be a mess when I lift it up.
Yeah.
If you have a mess, it's a pain. Working in it is not easy. You have this big spot in the middle that's hard to get. There's roughly a 1/4 inch of height to take the scum cup out of the skimmer and down. So I'm replacing this stand with an Alufab stand. It's extruded aluminum. It is a really slick looking stand. It's going to be open on the bottom so I can clean up any messes that I make. It's also going to be on casters so I can move it.
I still can't believe that is such a great idea.
There's a design that I've talked about with him. I'm going to get a shelf that's going to sit on the side. So instead of having all this stuff sitting on the top, making it look ugly, it's going to be sitting on a shelf where actually I should clean off a lot of it, but it'll be a lot more neat and organized. I also have a 12 individual plug heavy duty electrical system that I can unplug or switch off each one. It's going to sit in the back slightly away from the tank, so if water flows, it doesn't flow onto that and burn down the house. Planning ahead. So I will have that. Each one of those will be labeled for all 12. All the mess over on the left plug-wise will be gone. So everything will be hidden that way. This is going to look a lot nicer and be a lot cleaner and a lot slicker. The bottom of the tank will allow me to work in it much more readily. And even something simple like these hinges, after 4 years, they're all rusty.
Right.
Even though they were coated with Vaseline, they still get rusty. There's no hinges on this tank. It's a pull-in panel or pop-off panel. So when I want to work, I pull the panel off. When I don't want to work, I put the panel in. But even with the panel off, it's a really slick-looking stand.
Right.
I saw these stands. This is what Than at Tidal Gardens uses exclusively. These are as nicely designed and as techy as you can get stand-wise.
Right.
And actually, when I looked at the price on replacing this wooden stand,
Right.
it was only a few $100. Actually, I think $300 or $400 more than this stand.
Right.
And this stand is junk. It's made out of particle board or pine, and over time, it's going to rust. There's a slight dip going on.
Right.
You thought it was okay. I saw it starting to
Right.
tilt, and if it goes down much more, then you start to put pressure on the tank. So I don't want
Right, it'll
this
give,
tank
yeah.
breaking and dropping 120 gallons on the floor. I've already had disasters, not quite that bad. So I've already taken down this tank once. Last year we redid the floors. It took about 6 hours. I took everything out, moved the tank, set it up. They did the floors. I moved the tank back, put it in. This time I'm just going to move it, put the stand in, put the tank back up. It should be much easier to do. And I can adjust the things I want to make the changes to.
Right. Okay, so you said it was, what was the name of the stand? Alufab?
Alufab.
Such a cool name, number one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Alufab.
assembling your tank, Alufab.
Alufab. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna assemble the tank. That's gonna be a whole nother video,
Uh-huh.
just to see if someone as simple as me can do it. And then we're gonna do the entire tank exchange. We'll show you what it entails to take a tank down, put it back up, and move the stand in, put a new tank up, and then all the hopefully niceties we're gonna have with this new stand. I know it seems simple, and people tend to neglect the stand. I mean, the stand and the tank are the most critical things. We all go, oh, it's just the stand, it's just the tank.
No.
But when either of them fail, it's a disaster.
Right, right.
So,
Okay, so here's another question. Since it's panels that pop off, does that help as far as temperature of water? Meaning, hey, you lose your electricity or something like that, you can pop the panels off. I mean, I don't know.
I right now, when it gets hot in the summer,
Right.
I have to open these doors.
Right.
With that, I just pop it off,
Okay.
and it looks a lot better than having these doors sticking out
Right.
where you walk into them and everything else.
Right. Right.
So in that context, it's going to be a lot nicer.
And with the aluminum stands, can you alter them? You know, in other words, can you drill through them, or is it structurally okay, or do you have
Yeah,
to
as
go
long as you're
around
not
it?
putting a lot of holes in it, I'm assuming you can put, because I'm going to have to put one hole underneath to hold the light for the sump for the Miracle Mud Refugium.
Right.
Because that's the other thing that I still have on this tank after all these years is Miracle Mud.
You still like Miracle Mud?
I'm still using Miracle Mud. I still have Callirpa in there. As much as I feed this tank, the nitrate levels are at 10, the phosphate levels at 0.05.
There you go.
The corals are, I'm assuming, taking up a lot of it, but there's also Callirpa and stuff down there that's consuming it.
Right.
And there's a lot of microfauna in there, too, that is blowing stuff up for the fish to eat. So, all in all, I'm pretty happy with everything.
Okay, so question on, like at least the Miracle Mud. Are you still trimming basically the macroalgae, or did
I'm taking some out every month.
Okay.
A couple handfuls.
Okay.
Because right now I basically take out as much as I want to keep the nutrients where I want. I don't want the nutrient levels getting any lower than that.
Right.
So I don't want a ton.
Ah.
And if you clip it and cut it, it starts growing real fast and it sucks everything out. And then the corals like because they're starving.
Somebody took my food.
Yeah. So we don't want that.
Okay.
So you can adjust it. You learn over time how much you need to take out.
Sure, sure.
So it's basically a couple of handfuls every month or two.
Okay, and did you hear about like Ling and he's got the miracle? I call him a brick, but you know, I think he calls them paws or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. I thought that concept in itself, in other words, people who don't want to muck around in the sump with a tray.
I like the mud in a tray.
You like the
I'm
mud in a
old
tray?
school. It's not that hard to lift it out,
Yeah.
dump it out,
Yeah.
put the stuff you've already,
Yeah.
got wet and used to it, drop it back in, let the water not run for an hour. It all
Right.
settles down, and you're good.
And then you're good.
One thing I will tell you, if you do use a tray, make sure the tray is high enough so not a lot of it blows out, and don't have your return water blowing across it. Because if you blow that mud into your pumps, it will eat the pumps up.
Sure, right? Like putting rocks in there.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. But I've learned that, unfortunately, the hard way. But that's what else is going to be nice about this new stand is right now I have the sump sitting on bricks, so it's risen a little bit, so I can drain it. The new tank and sump are going to be higher without the bricks, so I'm going to have more of a space underneath, and it's going to be high enough so I can siphon it out when I want.
Perfect.
So basically, it has everything I needed. They've done in
Right.
this stand. So I'm really, really excited to change it over.
I'm just excited about the whole caster concept, meaning how do you keep all that weight on there without the breaking? But then the fact that they've got that figured out, then you can freaking move it.
Yeah, these are industrial casters. These are
Right.
not, the.
I'm thinking plastic ones.
No, these are industrial. These are
Yeah.
These are worth their weight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously we'll see how it goes. I mean, obviously there's a problem. We'll note that. But I don't expect it to be. I mean, after seeing everything at Than's and how slick it was, I knew that's what I had to get. And so I got it. We're going to build it. And we'll see how, one, how good of builders we are.
Right.
And two, then taking the time to do all this, which won't be fun, but it'll be entertaining.
I like it though, because you end up getting a new tank when you're done, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know?
But unfortunately, I've already had a new tank 3 times. Because remember, this was a 90-gallon tank where everything grew to the surface. We had to move things down and go to a 120.
Right.
That was 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow, right.
Then 2 years ago now, this summer, I had to take this down to do the floor.
Right.
And then last summer, I had to basically tear it down again to replace and change everything from the heat. So this tank's gone through a lot.
Yes, it is.
But the sunlight is still good. The tank's still obviously looking good. Obviously not everything's open, but with leather corals, they're never always open. That's one of the things I'm trying to figure out.
Well, I thought the whole turbinoid chemical warfare thing is what you have to.
There's
worry
a carbon reactor in the bottom,
So it should
supposedly
be-
taking a lot of it out. Plus, there's a poly filter in the overflow box. Between those two, I was hoping that would take most of the stuff out,
Right. Nope.
but hasn't seemed to make much of a difference. So I don't think that's it. I think there's something else.
Got it.
But I don't. There's no bite marks on the corals like there was when the blue-faced angel was in there, which I know was causing a lot of problems.
Right.
And some of the corals, like this gold tip back there, is always open, versus
Right.
some others like the weeping willows never open up. So I don't understand.
Yeah. To your point, now that's not the same gold tip that was in there 2 years ago.
No, that
So
died.
that didn't make it.
No, that one was this big.
Yeah.
That.
So it got that big.
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
Oh, the corals in there were almost like in the 90. They filled the whole tank.
Ah, no.
I mean, there was not a whole lot of room for the fish.
Yeah.
Here, I mean, I'm looking forward to the growth, but I'm not looking forward to the growth.
Yeah. I like the fish. They look good.
Yeah.
Especially like the Antheus and Chromis, those little schooling. It just looks good.
Yeah, it's an interesting tank. It's a fun tank to.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
I mean, sit out here in the sunlight or in the moonlight and watch it.
yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Still happy with the lights, right?
Yeah, the lights are spectacular. I mean, you can still see the blue lights all over the neighborhood.
Yeah. I saw them pull them up today.
Well, you should see it in the snow. I took a couple pictures last winter that you can see them from 2 blocks away.
Yes, I saw it because you posted it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
David said, you should do it when it snowed. Well, it didn't snow all winter, but one day. So I went out and took pictures from the back street.
Right.
I mean, but on Halloween, you could see them from the neighbor's house.
It's awesome.
Yeah, even from up on the hill.
Right.
Which is like, quarter mile away. You can still
but
see the blue
that
lights.
blue with
Yeah.
these windows. Yeah.
No, I've actually looked at they make boxes now that will sit on these and focus the light down.
Okay.
The problem is they're made for G5s and G6s.
Not for
They
us.
won't fit on the G4s.
Got it.
And I'm not planning on switching these till they're burned out.
Yeah. Right. And you added the blue just for the blue color kind of thing with the reef brights?
They
or-
really make the colors pop on some of these softies.
Okay.
I mean, you can get blue, but it's just a little more light,
Right.
particularly in the wintertime.
Sure. Makes sense. So things you aren't happy with: stand, wooden stand, and you're saying not just this stand, but in general wooden stands.
In general, wooden stands have gotten to be junkier. I mean, I remember we used to have the wrought iron stands. The problem with
Right.
those is they always rusted.
Right.
Even if you coated them, they always rusted. And with wooden, they just make them crappier than they used to.
Right.
I mean, everything's about money in the hobby, and they've learned that people will pay money for. I mean, I have built my own stands. I built my stand, well, not built it, but I had it custom built for my 1,200 gallon
Right,
tank.
right.
But I physically built my stands for my 240 and my 540. And I know what it takes to build stands. I mean, those were made out of oak.
Right.
The 240 was actually on casters as well, industrial casters. I moved that tank
Ah, really?
from Greensburg to Treesdale to here. So we moved that in a truck. We just wheeled it out.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was insane.
I bet.
Oh, yeah, it was.
There goes the tank.
Yeah, but I went with 2 woodworkers, and I spent 6 months building the stands.
Right.
I mean, and the stands, after 2 years, were still like brand new because everything was quadruple polyurethane. Everything was, if saltwater hit it, I just wiped it off. Here, this is junk.
You get a cover of Rust-Oleum 1 coat. That's what you get.
Yeah, this is several coats. This has probably been painted 5 times.
Yeah.
And it just looks bad.
Yeah. that'll actually make this room look good too.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing.
So, I mean, realistically, there's no other fish I want to add to this tank. There's not really a whole lot of other corals. So I'm, for all intents and purposes, done with this tank once I change the stand out. I mean, I'm very happy with the flow. I'm going to change this power head out for a Nero 7, which just came out, and have that basically blow a wave across this and this.
Right.
The only other thing that's going to be a pain is when I take this down, I got to get all this bubble algae out of here as much as I can.
I didn't see bubble algae.
Yeah, that's the main reason I got the little sailfin tang to eat the bubble algae.
Yep.
But he's too small to eat it. The tangs eat it, but it's just getting out of control.
Right.
So as we're taking stuff, I'll be with a toothbrush cleaning out every last piece of bubble algae that I can, and that'll make things nicer in this tank too.
And when you set it back up, you're going to keep the same general rock formation?
I'm planning on not changing anything because I like this.
Yes.
I mean, even though it's,
I like the two
candy
levels
stand,
of
it's higher to lower. There's a whole area of just rock over here. I like how it looks.
Yeah, I do
And
too.
it's functional. I can get in and clean it real easily. I can get to the corals real easily.
Right.
I mean, to me, if I was a beginner, this would be the size tank I would want.
Right.
Either a 120 or a 90. Because
Yeah,
it's nicely, there's nice depth to
yes,
it.
depth.
And the height isn't so bad that I can reach the bottom. And most people can reach the bottom without you needing a step stool.
Well, I was going to say, to that point, remember these videos are usually new hobbyists, right?
Yep.
So go over that kind of rationale real quick as far as, like, why do I care that it's deep?
You like the depth front to back because it allows the corals to spread out. You're not requiring or just want them to grow up. The old tanks that we used to have was the old 55. That was the death tank because it was long and narrow. There wasn't enough surface area to get a good oxygen exchange. The corals didn't have a whole lot of space. You would always be fighting them as they went across the glass. It was a tough tank to work in. This tank is easy because there's 2 feet front to back. The depth is such that it's 30 inches. I have 36-inch arms, so I have enough depth I can work.
Right.
And if I want to take pictures from the top, which is the nicest pictures, it's easy.
Right.
So you don't want to stand this high, so you're looking at it eye level. A nice stand will be slightly below the top of your waist. That gives you the perfect depth to work in the tank and to look in the tank without needing a step stool or anything else.
Right.
Because I can't tell you how many people have fallen off a little stool or even off a big step stool and gotten injured. I mean, that's one of the easiest ways to get hurt in this hobby is falling off of something. And having put 30 stitches on my head falling stupidly, I'm trying not to do that.
Well, I was going to say that when you're falling, you usually pull something with you. Hopefully it's
Yeah,
not a
and
tank.
you don't want to pull the tank down on top of you. That would be very bad.
Right. Okay, so new hobbyist, deep tank. Again, don't get wood stands, right? And softies. Well, let's talk about that for a second. Again, new hobbyist, softies. Are there any softies in there you wouldn't recommend for the new hobbyist?
I like them all. I wouldn't. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't start with gorgonians and sea fans because those are more difficult and need to be fed a little bit. So, but for all other softies, you can get nice rose bubble tip anemones. That's what draws a lot of people into the hobby. A pair of clownfish and a bubble tip.
Sure.
It's nice. It's relatively easy. You just got to keep them away from your power heads. But for the sinularias, the leather corals, stereonepthias, quina trees, mushrooms, zoanthids are all great from my point of view. The problem I see is everybody's trying to push you to start in SPS corals with these crazy expensive acrofrags. Look how beautiful. One, those grow much slower than this. Two, they're more difficult to keep than this. And three, from my point of view, they're harder to find. These are harder to find now. Finding soft corals, I mean, I basically drive all around for people that have stuff and trade them or buy from them because you can't find these. Shops don't carry them. They don't import them into the same degree that they used to. I mean, when I started, they used to bring in 12 boxes of soft corals and 1 box of SPS. Now it's 20 boxes of SPS and a half a box of softies. Because nobody wants softies. Look at this tank. Is this a non-colorful tank? Is this a boring tank?
No.
You got flow, you got corals moving, you got colors. To me, this is a great tank. If I was a beginner, this is what I would want because one, it's easier to maintain. Two, the corals are a lot less expensive than the SPS corals. Three, the water conditions don't have to be absolutely pristine. It gives you more margin for error. Four, you can put virtually any fish you want in here. And five, it's just fun to watch. It's an entertaining tank. There's always something going on, whether it's a goby or wrasse going in the sand, whether it's the hawkfish pairing up, whether it's the anthias swimming into the school or the chromis. There's a lot going on, and none of the fish and none of the corals are crazy expensive.
Right.
I don't think there's anything in here over $100.
Right. Which is perfect.
Which is amazing to say, because when you look at my SPS tank, I mean, I have several
I was gonna say.
several major appliances and single corals.
Right, that are bigger than your phone.
Yeah, look at this.
Right,
Ooh,
exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, I wish more people got back into soft corals, because one, I'd love to buy and trade with them.
Right, exactly.
But two, I think this would help a lot more people get into the hobby.
Right.
Because that's my one fear, is that people are staying away from the hobby because it got so prohibitively expensive.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be. If you do this kind of tank, you can do it for a lot less than an SPS tank.
Right, right. Yeah, and to your point, there's motion in there, there's color in there, it's just everything. So
Yeah, the fish are happy, the corals look happy. I mean, my last of my yellow tangs.
really?
Yep, sad.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I'm not paying $300 for a yellow tang.
Yeah, the prices have gone up a little bit.
Well,
right?
Hawaii's supposed to open, but they're going to bring them in at a crazy price, so
Yeah,
I can live without a yellow tang. I have one. I've had one my whole life.
yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So to that point, then the next time we'll be back at this tank will be to build a stand and move us onto that stand.
Exactly.
With theoretically not breaking anything.
Yeah, well, they're not losing any fish or corals. That's the key. But you'll wait and see what we have prepared for that transfer.
I bet. Okay, hold it. Give me a little. Last time when we did it, right? I remember basically a huge hose, right? That you were going to drain water quick, right?
Yep.
And then after that, a huge stack of towels because you knew there was going to be water falling.
Right.
But those were the only things that you were like, well, I got it covered from here.
Now, that was easy because that was only 90. This is 120.
Yes.
We still have the big blue box.
Okay.
We're putting the rock in.
Yep.
We have a couple large, flat, actually they're out there on the porch, to hold the corals.
Yep.
Then we have 15 5-gallon buckets to hold all the water.
So you're going to keep the water.
Keep
then,
as much of the water as I
yes.
want. There will be 50 gallons of fresh salt water, all mixed up and ready to go downstairs should there be any major catastrophes. The sump is going to be taken apart and cleaned. A new set of Miracle Muds going in. What else is there? Other than that, it's basically the same type of
but
thing.
Still, there's a lot more. It sounds like you have a lot more. How can I say?
There's a lot more individual corals in here now, and there's a lot more fish. So it's going to take a lot more patience getting them out without injuring them. Because I'm going to try and catch the fish in buckets rather than with nets.
Right, you did that last time. You did most of them.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I will do here because I don't want to stress them, take off their stress cut, and then have an ick outbreak.
Right, right.
So, and there will be a UV sterilizer put back on
Wow.
whenever this goes back on to prevent any. Because I mean, a lot of people don't like UV. I love UV when I add new fish.
Right.
It really has cut down on my ick or any other outbreaks.
Right.
So,
And you
knock
can
on wood.
But again, you can always shut it off. It's a
Yeah,
power
shut
switch,
it off and take it out. It's not a
Right.
huge power drain. So.
Exactly. So better safe than sorry.
So that's what we're doing on the next visit to this tank.
So stay tuned.
And that will hopefully be soon.
Yes, right. Not 3 years.
No, not 3 years.
Okay.
3 weeks, hopefully.
Right.
in the
I was going
max.
to say hopefully sooner than that.
Yes. So.
Good deal. Thank you, Michael.
Yep. Good seeing you, Russ.